Hey guys, tonight we drift gently to the surface of a lake. The water is still. Not silent, but softly alive, brushing against reeds, tapping against wooden canoe hulls, carrying the faint scent of wet earth and growing things. In the distance, pyramids rise above the morning mist, their outlines steady and geometric against the sky. This is the Valley of Mexico in the early 16th century, before stone met steel, before one world pressed heavily against another. We will move slowly through an Aztec Chinampa farming village, through its mud-walled homes and narrow canals, through the rhythm of maize grinding and tribute counting, through ritual calendars that measure time not by hours, but by sacred cycles. Our journey will be calm. We will not hurry. We will notice small details, the weight of damp soil between fingers, the steady scrape of a grinding stone, the careful stacking of tribute bundles bound for a distant capital. This is not a story of spectacle. It is a story of repetition, of labor, of order, of cosmos and corn. Across 8 quiet segments, we will travel from the floating gardens of a Chinampa village to the court of Moctezuma II, from bustling markets to sacred temples layered beneath the earth. We will observe leadership in uncertain times, the slow arrival of unfamiliar ships, and the social structures that shape daily life. But first, we begin where most lives began, in the mud and reeds of a farming village built upon water. Settle in. Let the lake carry us. You wake before the sun fully lifts above the eastern mountains. The air is cool and damp. It smells of lake water and vegetation, green, mineral, alive. Your home is made of adobe and reed, its walls thick enough to hold warmth through the night but porous enough to breathe. Outside, canals stretch in neat lines, separating long rectangular plots of land, chinampas, the so-called floating gardens. They do not float freely, but are anchored carefully to the lake bed with willow trees whose roots hold everything in place. You rise quietly. There is work to do. The first sound of the morning is often the steady, rhythmic scraping of stone against stone. Inside your home, someone is already grinding maize on a metate. The motion is practiced and unhurried, forward, back, forward again. The scent of fresh masa begins to fill the room. Maize is everything. It is sustenance, obligation, offering. Your day revolves around it. You step into a narrow canoe carved from a single trunk. The wood creaks softly beneath your weight. With a long pole, you guide yourself down the canal, gliding between plots dense with growth, maize stalks rising tall, beans winding upward, squash leaves spreading wide and protective over the soil. The Chinampas are marvels of quiet engineering. Layers of lake sediment and decaying vegetation have been built up over generations, creating rich, dark soil that produces multiple harvests a year. You do not think of it as engineering. You think of it as inheritance. This land was shaped by your ancestors, and it must feed your descendants. You step onto the plot carefully. The soil is moist, cool between your toes if you wear sandals at all. Weeding, tending, checking irrigation channels, these tasks are small but constant. The lake water must flow gently through the ditches. Too much and roots drown. Too little and plants weaken. The sun climbs higher. Humidity thickens. You pause only briefly to eat a simple meal. Tortillas folded around beans, perhaps a bit of chili for heat. Everything is measured. Everything is saved. Because beyond feeding your family, there are quotas. Tribute. Your village belongs to a larger political structure centered in Tenochtitlan. Goods move outward from your Chinampa. Maize, amaranth, chilies, sometimes woven cloth or crafted items. Officials keep records, not in alphabetic script, but in painted codices filled with symbols and numbers. The tribute is not optional. It is expected. You know the rhythm of collection days. Canoes arrive. Bundles are counted. Quantities are verified. The process is orderly, supervised by local leaders who belong to your kalpuli, your clan-based community unit. There is little room for excess. A poor harvest means tighter meals. A missed quota brings scrutiny. Yet daily life is not only labor. Children move between houses, laughter echoing across water. Dogs bark from reed-lined banks. Women gather to grind maize together, their conversation steady and familiar. Elders sit in shaded areas, recounting stories of earlier rulers and sacred signs. Above all, time is shaped by the calendar. Not merely seasons, but sacred cycles, days marked by specific symbols, each carrying meaning. Certain days are auspicious for planting. Others are suited to ceremonies. You live within a structure of time that feels both predictable and profound. The world is not random. It is ordered. You glance occasionally toward the distant silhouette of Tenochtitlan, its temples rising like stepped mountains from the lake's surface. It is both near and far. You supply it. You depend on it. Yet your life remains here among reeds and soil. Evenings come gently. The light turns golden across the canals. Canoes return. Fires are lit. The scent of maize and herbs rises once more. You sit inside your home, mending tools or weaving simple textiles. The sound of insects replaces the sound of grinding stone. The lake reflects the sky. Your body aches in a quiet, familiar way, shoulders sore from lifting, hands rough from soil. You do not question this fatigue. It is simply the shape of existence. Life in Chinampa village is neither dramatic nor idle. It is constant. Mud under fingernails. Maize beneath a grinding stone. Bundles tied carefully for tribute. The rhythm repeats tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. For you, survival depends on balance, between water and soil, between family and empire, between human labor and divine order. And in the stillness of night, with the pyramids faintly visible across the water, you understand that your small plot of land is part of something vast. An empire sustained not only by warriors and rulers, but by the steady hands of farmers who rise before dawn. The lake settles. The stars appear. And morning will come again. As we leave the quiet reeds of the Chinampa village, we drift inward, toward stone causeways and ceremonial courtyards. The water widens. The city rises. At the center of this carefully ordered world stands a man whose name would echo far beyond the lake. Moctezuma II. He was not born into chaos. He was born into structure. In the late 15th century, the Mexica Empire was already vast. Tribute flowing from distant provinces, armies marching outward, markets brimming with goods from mountains and coasts. Yet power in this world was never casual. It was ritualized, disciplined, and deeply symbolic. Moctezuma, or Moctezuma Xocoyotzin, was trained from youth not simply to rule but to embody order. As a young noble, he entered the calm severity of priestly education. He learned to fast, to wake before dawn, to perform rituals precisely, to speak carefully with restraint. Nobility in Tenochtitlan was not merely wealth, it was composure. His early life would have been structured by repetition, incense rising in temple halls, codicy studied under watchful eyes, discipline enforced quietly but firmly. In this society, leaders were expected to demonstrate self-control before they ever commanded others. When he ascended to the throne in 1502, he inherited not only an empire but an expectation of stability. The capital city, Tenochtitlan, shimmered across the lake, causeways stretching like geometric lines across water, temples layered in white stucco and red paint. The Templo Mayor, rising at the city's heart, symbolized cosmic balance, twin stairways honoring gods of rain and war. Moctezuma ruled from within this sacred geometry. He reorganized court protocol, increasing the distance between ruler and subject. Audiences became more formal. Access to the emperor required layers of permission. Even his appearance was ritualized. Fine cotton garments, feathered adornments, jade jewelry polished smooth. But this refinement was not indulgence. It was a strategy. By elevating the mystique of rulership, Moctezuma reinforced imperial authority. Tribute collectors operated more efficiently. Provincial governors were reminded of central power. The empire, though geographically vast, was knit together by ceremony. Under his reign, tribute lists expanded. Goods flowed into Tenochtitlan: cacao beans from tropical regions, cotton cloth, obsidian blades, bright feathers, ceramics, foodstuffs. And yet, beneath the polished floors of palace corridors, uncertainty always lingered. Empires are delicate systems. Expansion brings wealth, but also resentment. Conquered regions paid tribute, but they did not always do so willingly. Maintaining order required constant vigilance. Diplomatic marriages, displays of military strength, ritual reinforcement. Moctezuma was known as a thoughtful ruler, cautious, attentive to omens. The Mexica worldview was steeped in signs, celestial movements, unusual births, changes in weather patterns. The cosmos was not separate from politics. In palace courtyards, priests observed the heavens. In quiet chambers, advisors debated the meaning of strange reports from distant coasts. It is said that Moctezuma took these signs seriously. Whether from deep belief or prudent caution, he understood that stability was never guaranteed. Leadership in this world required balance. Firmness without cruelty, ritual without rigidity, expansion without fracture. And yet, power isolates. While farmers labored in Chinampa fields, while merchants haggled in markets, Moctezuma inhabited a world of polished stone and hushed protocol. He ate from fine vessels. He slept behind guarded doors. Servants moved silently in his presence. Distance creates reverence, but it also creates separation. When news began to travel inland of unfamiliar visitors, men arriving on towering wooden vessels with strange animals and gleaming armor, Moctezuma faced not only a political question, but a cosmological one. Who were these strangers? Were they traitors? Invaders? Something else entirely? Reports filtered slowly like ripples across water. Messengers ran along causeways. Painted records attempted to capture unfamiliar forms, bearded faces, metallic reflections, animals that seemed fused to men. Moctezuma did not react impulsively. He sent gifts. Gold, textiles, carefully chosen offerings meant to assert wealth and diplomacy simultaneously. Such gestures were consistent with established patterns of imperial engagement. Yet this moment marked a subtle shift. For all his ritual composure, Moctezuma was navigating uncertainty unlike any faced by his predecessors. The empire had expanded across familiar landscapes, neighboring city-states, known rivalries. Now, something entirely foreign approached. Inside palace halls, incense continued to burn. Court ceremonies continued. Tribute was still recorded. But beneath it all, tension gathered quietly. Moctezuma's leadership, once defined by consolidation and refinement, would soon be tested by forces beyond precedent. And as we move forward in our journey, we will witness how this careful, ordered world encountered something wholly unexpected. Not in a single dramatic instant, but in a slow, unfolding collision of worlds. The lake remains calm, but distant shores are shifting. The lake is still. The reeds whisper at their edges. And somewhere along the distant coast of the Gulf, unfamiliar sails appear on the horizon. In the year 1519, Hernán Cortés stepped onto the shores of Mesoamerica. He did not arrive into emptiness. He arrived into a world layered with ritual, tribute, alliances, rivalries, a world already intricate and fully alive. But to the people who first saw the ships, the sight would have been disorienting. Wooden vessels taller than temple platforms. Cloth wings stretched wide. Metal surfaces that caught the sun in a way obsidian never did. News traveled slowly inland. From coastal communities to provincial governors. From governors to imperial messengers. And eventually to Tenochtitlan. You can imagine the rhythm of that news, not shouted but carried. Footsteps across causeways. Messengers kneeling before officials. Painted codices updated carefully, capturing the unfamiliar shapes of men with beards and helmets, animals large and unknown, weapons that sounded like thunder. Moctezuma listened. He did not rush. In the Mexica worldview, events were rarely random. They were woven into cycles, into omens, into prophecies, into the steady turning of suns and years. The calendar priests consulted sacred day signs. Unusual occurrences were measured against ancient patterns. Cortés, meanwhile, moved inland deliberately. He was not alone. He traveled with soldiers, translators, allied indigenous groups who opposed Mexica dominance. This detail is important. The arrival was not a simple story of two sides meeting in isolation. It was a complex rearrangement of existing rivalries. Along the route, negotiations occurred. Some cities resisted. Others allied. Each step reshaped the balance of power. When Cortés finally approached Tenochtitlan, he did so across the causeways, those long stone pathways rising above the lake. The city would have appeared extraordinary to European eyes. Canals like veins of water, markets dense with goods, temples rising in geometric precision. And for the Mexica, the strangers must have seemed equally surreal. Metal armor that did not resemble woven cotton padding. Animals, horses, moving with unfamiliar grace. The sharp crack of firearms, more startling than any obsidian blade. The meeting between Moctezuma and Cortés has been retold many times, often dramatized. But in our quieter telling we slow it down. Moctezuma, adorned in fine cotton, jade and feathers, approaches with ceremony. Cortés, armored, accompanied by interpreters such as Malintzin, known also as La Malinche, steps forward. Words pass between languages, Nahuatl to Maya, Maya to Spanish. Meanings shift slightly in translation. Diplomatic gestures are exchanged. Gifts are presented, gold discs, intricate textiles, featherwork of extraordinary delicacy. There is formality. There is caution. There is curiosity. At first, coexistence. Cortés and his men are housed within the city. They observe the markets of Tlatelolco. They study the temples. They write letters back to Spain describing wealth beyond expectation. But proximity breeds tension. Gold, once symbolic within Mexica culture, becomes a focal point for European ambition. Political miscalculations compound. Alliances with rival city-states strengthen Spanish positioning. Within palace walls, Moctezuma faces an impossible calculation. To expel the foreigners risks immediate conflict. To host them risks internal instability. His authority, once unchallenged, begins to erode in subtle ways. Nobles whisper. Provincial leaders assess their loyalties. Then comes the rupture. Events accelerate, not in a blaze but in a tightening spiral. Violence breaks out during a religious festival. Distrust hardens. The delicate balance collapses. Moctezuma is taken into a form of captivity within his own palace. He remains visible but no longer entirely free. His voice, once decisive, is filtered through foreign demands. Outside, unrest grows. The city that once felt ordered now feels strained. Causeways become contested pathways. Alliances fracture. The lake, once reflective and calm, becomes a site of movement and maneuvering. Moctezuma's final days are marked by uncertainty. Accounts differ, some written by Spanish chroniclers, others preserved in indigenous memory. What remains clear is that his authority dissolved amid the upheaval. After his death, leadership passes quickly to others. Conflict intensifies. Eventually, siege and disease, invisible forces, reshape the city entirely. The canals that once carried canoes now carry debris. The great temples are dismantled, their stones reused. Tenochtitlan, as it was known, does not survive intact. In its place rises Mexico City. But even in transformation, layers remain. Beneath modern streets lie foundations of chinampas, temple platforms, buried offerings. History does not vanish. It settles. The arrival of Cortés was not merely a military event. It was a collision of cosmologies, two systems of belief and governance encountering each other without shared language or mutual understanding. For the villagers tending maize on floating gardens, the consequences unfolded gradually. Tribute systems changed. Religious practices were disrupted. New diseases altered demographics in ways that reshaped families and communities. Empires fell. But daily life, grinding maize, tending crops, whispering prayers, continued in altered forms. The lake remained. The wind still moved across its surface. And as we move forward, we turn our attention downward, beneath modern pavement and cathedral stones, to the sacred layers uncovered centuries later. Because sometimes history is rediscovered not in chronicles but in soil. If you stand today in the historic center of Mexico City, traffic hums softly around you. Stone buildings rise in orderly European lines. Cathedral bells echo across plazas paved in gray. Yet beneath your feet, quietly, patiently, rests another city. In 1978, electrical workers digging near the Metropolitan Cathedral struck something unexpected: a massive circular stone carved with the image of a dismembered goddess. The carving depicted Coilzaqui, sister of the sun god Huitzilopochtli, shown in stylized form, limbs arranged in sacred geometry. That moment of discovery opened a door. Beneath the colonial layers lay the buried heart of Tenochtitlan, the Templo Mayor, the great temple of the Mexica capital. Archaeologists began to excavate carefully, methodically, layer by layer, stone by stone. Dust brushed away gently with soft tools. The work was slow, almost meditative. Each fragment required documentation. Each offering required interpretation. There was no rush, only patience. As soil gave way, terraces emerged. Staircases, platforms, sculptures. Entire architectural phases stacked atop one another like pages in a book. The Mexica had rebuilt their temple multiple times, each ruler expanding it, each layer preserving the previous one beneath. A city built in vertical memory. You can imagine standing at the base of that temple centuries earlier. The smell of copal incense drifting upward. The steady beat of drums during ceremonies. The careful procession of priests ascending the steps. Today, archaeologists ascend more cautiously, notebooks in hand. The excavations revealed offerings buried deliberately within the structure. Jade beads, obsidian blades, coral from distant coasts, shells from tropical waters, figurines shaped in intricate detail. Each object tells a quiet story. Trade networks stretching across Mesoamerica. Tribute flowing inward. Symbolism layered carefully within ritual deposits. The Mexico worldview did not separate politics from religion or architecture from cosmology. The temple was not merely a building. It was a map of the universe. Its twin shrines at the summit represented two deities: Tlaloc, god of rain and fertility, and Huitzilopochtli, god of the sun and war, water and fire, agriculture and conquest, sustenance and expansion, all in balance. Archaeologists uncovered evidence of ceremonies, carefully arranged offerings placed in symmetrical patterns. Animal remains, including eagles and jaguars, symbolized power and divine connection. Marine life from distant seas reflected cosmic waters. Even in silence, the temple speaks. Not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily. Excavation also revealed the scale of imperial ambition. The structure had grown over time, expanding outward and upward as the empire itself expanded. Rulers inscribed their authority into stone. Each new layer reinforced legitimacy. Each expansion reaffirmed cosmic order. Standing amid the exposed foundations, one can feel a certain stillness. Modern city sounds drift overhead, but below there is an almost hushed reverence. The earth preserves memory, and memory, when uncovered, asks questions. How did laborers transport such massive stones across lake causeways? How were rituals coordinated with astronomical cycles? How did ordinary villagers, maize farmers on chinampas, experience ceremonies that reinforced imperial ideology? The excavation of Templo Mayor did not merely reveal artifacts. It revealed continuity. Because even after Spanish conquest reshaped the city, indigenous communities continued to live, adapt, and remember. Beneath colonial cathedrals lay sacred precincts. Beneath paved streets lay canal beds. Beneath official narratives lay layered histories. The act of excavation becomes almost symbolic, peeling back time, uncovering resilience. Each offering placed centuries ago was intended for the gods. Today they are studied under laboratory light, measured, cataloged, interpreted. Yet they retain something intangible, a quiet gravity. They remind us that Tenochtitlan was not a mythic city of legend, nor merely a conquest tale. It was structured, deliberate, cosmically aligned. And the villagers in Chinampa communities were connected to that sacred center, whether through tribute goods, ritual calendars, or shared belief systems. As we leave the excavation site, brushing dust from our imagined sleeves, we carry with us the awareness that beneath every grand narrative lie layers, built, buried, and sometimes rediscovered. Now, we turn from stone foundations to the invisible architecture of belief itself. from temples of masonry to temples of meaning. Let us step gently into the world of Aztec cosmology. Before the canals, before the tribute quotas, before the rising of pyramids above the lake, there was the sky, and in that sky movement. To understand life in a Chinampa village, you must first understand how the Mexica understood the universe itself, not as empty space but as layered, living structure. The cosmos in their view was fragile, balanced, sustained through rhythm and reciprocity. The Mexica believed they were living in the fifth sun, one era among several that had come before. Previous worlds, according to sacred narratives, had ended in catastrophe, devoured by jaguars, swept away by wind, consumed by fire, drowned by flood. These were not told as thrilling apocalypses. They were lessons in impermanence. The current sun, too, required nourishment. The sun rose each morning because it was sustained through ritual, devotion, and cosmic obligation. In a Chinampa village, this belief did not feel abstract. It shaped the planting calendar. It guided feast days. It determined when seeds entered soil and when maize was harvested. You wake before dawn. The air is cool and damp. Mist hangs low over the canal. Above you, Venus glimmers faintly in the fading night, a celestial marker whose cycles priests carefully tracked. Time itself was sacred. The Mexica used multiple calendars interwoven like braided reeds. The 260-day ritual calendar, the Tenochtitlan, assigned spiritual qualities to each day. The 365-day solar calendar, the Zayapawali, governed agricultural cycles. Each day carried personality, energy, moment. To grind maize on a certain day was not merely labor, it unfolded within cosmic context. Children were named based on the day of their birth, their identities shaped by celestial alignments. In the village, elders might speak softly of signs in the sky, a comet, an eclipse, a prolonged drought. Such phenomena were not random. They were interpreted, discussed, integrated into a worldview where the universe was animate. The gods were not distant abstractions. They were forces woven into everyday life. Tlaloc brought rain and withheld it. Totec symbolized renewal through shedding. Quetzalcoatl embodied wind and wisdom. And at the center, Huitzilopochtli guided the Mexica people on their migration to Tenochtitlan, promising destiny tied to the image of an eagle perched on a cactus. Cosmology offered reassurance. It also demanded responsibility. Ritual offerings were not performed lightly. They were acts of maintenance, ensuring that cosmic order remained intact. In Chinampa villages, ritual could be intimate and small-scale. A family offering maize kernels at a household shrine. A village ceremony aligning with larger imperial festivals. Incense rising gently, its fragrance curling through still air. Drums echoing faintly from distant temples. The symbolism of sacrifice, often misunderstood through modern lenses, rested on the principle of reciprocity. The gods had given their own essence to set the sun in motion. Humans, in turn, offered sustenance back. It was not spectacle alone. It was cosmological duty. For villagers, these rituals structured time and reinforced identity. Even if imperial ceremonies took place in Tenochtitlan's grand plazas, the rhythm of belief reached into modest reed huts. Imagine sitting by evening light. The canal reflects orange sky. An elder recounts the creation story, how Nana Watson leapt into the fire to become the sun. The story is not dramatic in tone. It is steady, reassuring. It explains why endurance matters, why effort sustains the world. The cosmos was layered vertically, 13 heavens above, 9 underworld layers below. Humans inhabited the middle realm, suspended between celestial light and shadow depths. This layering mirrored social structure. Just as there were noble classes and commoners, there were celestial hierarchies. Everything had place. Everything had function. And when crops failed or illness spread, cosmology provided explanation. Perhaps a ritual had been neglected. Perhaps alignment had shifted. Perhaps the balance required restoration. It is easy from a modern perspective to separate religion from agriculture, from governance, from daily labor. But in a Chinampa village, such separations did not exist. Grinding maize was sacred. Launching a canoe was sacred. Even sweeping the floor could be framed as restoring order. Cosmology made monotony meaningful. It transformed repetition into participation in something vast. As night falls again over the canals, stars emerge one by one. The Milky Way stretches overhead like a luminous path. In the quiet, you understand why belief mattered. Not to terrify, not to dominate, but to situate. To remind each farmer, each child, each artisan that their labor participated in a larger pattern. And in that understanding there was comfort. From cosmic cycles, we now descend gently back to Earth, to the practical rhythms of exchange and survival. From sacred calendars to bustling marketplaces. Let us step quietly into the market of Tlatelolco. Dawn spreads slowly over the lake. Mist lifts from the canals, revealing movement. Dozens, then hundreds of narrow canoes gliding toward a single destination. You guide your canoe carefully, balancing baskets of maize, bundles of chilies, perhaps woven reed mats still damp from yesterday's weaving. The water makes only a soft sound against the hull. No shouting yet. No bargaining. Just arrival. Ahead lies Tlatelolco, the commercial heart of the Mexico world. Not far from Tenochtitlan's ceremonial precinct, this vast market thrums with quiet order long before the sun reaches its height. You step from canoe to wooden landing. Already, merchants arrange their goods with methodical care. The market is immense. Chroniclers would later describe tens of thousands gathering on peak days. But for you, it feels less like a spectacle and more like a ritual of repetition. Stalls are organized by product. Textiles in one area, obsidian blades in another, cacao beans carefully measured in small piles. Order governs exchange. Supervisors walk calmly among the traders, ensuring fairness. Disputes are resolved through designated judges seated at the edge of the square. There is structure here. Predictability. A rhythm as steady as the paddling that brought you. You spread your goods. Maize cobs stacked in tidy rows. Dried beans in woven baskets. Perhaps you carry amaranth cakes wrapped in leaves. Currency exists, but not in minted coins. Cacao beans function as standardized value. A turkey egg may cost a certain number. A cotton cloak considerably more. Small items, needles of bone, clay bowls, feathers, change hands in quiet negotiation. Barter remains common. You exchange surplus maize for salt harvested from distant shores, or for obsidian tools shaped from volcanic glass. Everything moves slowly, measured. No frantic rush. The market is not chaos, it is choreography. Smells drift in layers: roasted maize, crushed herbs, damp reeds, human presence warmed by sunlight. Vendors call softly, not aggressively. There is confidence in abundance. You notice traders from beyond the Valley of Mexico. Their clothing differs slightly. Their dialects carry unfamiliar cadences. They bring goods unavailable in your village. Jade from distant mountains, shells from coastal waters, cacao from humid lowlands far to the south. Trade binds regions together. Your Chinampa harvest does not exist in isolation. It feeds an empire. Tribute flows inward from conquered provinces. Textiles, feathers, cacao, metals, and redistribution flows outward through markets like this. In this space, social classes mingle, though not equally. Commoners trade directly. Nobles observe from shaded platforms. Professional merchants, paktika, operate with particular privilege. They travel far beyond the empire's borders, returning with exotic goods and intelligence. Their journeys are quiet but consequential. For you, the market represents something simpler. Relief. Opportunity. A break from the isolation of fields. You overhear fragments of conversation. A mother negotiating for sandals. A craftsman discussing obsidian quality. A priest selecting ritual incense. Nearby, prepared food vendors serve steaming tamales. You pause, exchanging a few cacao beans for warm sustenance. The masa is soft. The filling seasoned with mild chili. It tastes like familiarity, like routine. There is security in systems that function, in measured weights, in known values. Even taxation and tribute, burdensome though they may be, follow patterns. Quotas are assessed, recorded, fulfilled. The empire's strength depends on predictability. And yet, beneath the surface calm, subtle tensions persist. High tribute demands strain distant provinces. Ambitious merchants accumulate influence. Imperial expansion stretches logistics. But here, today, in this marketplace, the machinery hums smoothly. By midday, the square is at its fullest. Feathers shimmer in sunlight. Copper bells chime faintly. Children weave between stalls. You complete your exchanges. Your canoe grows lighter. Your household will have salt. Perhaps a new clay vessel. Perhaps a cotton cloth finer than what you could weave at home. As afternoon wanes, vendors pack deliberately. Unsold goods return to boats. Judges withdraw. The square empties without frenzy. Trade has done its work. You push away from the landing, paddle dipping rhythmically into water now tinged with gold from the descending sun. Behind you, the market quiets. Ahead, the canals lead home. In the balance of exchange, of giving and receiving, lies the foundation of imperial stability. Yet markets do not function without social structure. Trade depends on organization, obligation, belonging. Let us drift now into the framework that shaped village life itself, the Kalpuli. The canals narrow again as you return to your village. Reeds whisper softly against the edges of your canoe. In the distance, smoke rises from cooking fires. Dogs bark. Children's voices carry faintly over water. You are not alone in this world, even if your labor often feels solitary. You belong to something called a Kalpuli. The word does not translate neatly. It is part clan, part neighborhood, part administrative unit. It is the framework that holds daily life together. You were born into it. You did not choose it. And you will likely remain within it all your life. Your Kalpuli assigns land for cultivation. Chinampa plots are not purely private possessions in the modern sense. They are held through membership, through obligation and contribution. As long as you fulfill duties, the land sustains you. The structure is communal but not equal. Each Kalpuli has leaders, elders, administrators, sometimes hereditary figures, who coordinate tribute payments to the empire. They record harvest yields. They organize labor drafts for public works. When the imperial authorities demand goods, maize, beans, textiles, your Kalpuli calculates how much each household must provide. Responsibility flows downward. Protection, in theory, flows upward. Within your Kalpuli, social roles become clear. Farmers cultivate chinampas. Artisans shape clay or carve obsidian. Teachers instruct boys in the Kalmakak or Telpakali schools, depending on social standing. Women grind maize, weave cloth, maintain household rituals. The rhythm of daily life is interwoven with shared expectation. There is comfort in belonging and pressure. Your neighbors know if you fail to contribute. They see whether your fields are tended. They observe whether your tribute is delivered on time. Reputation matters. Honor matters. Kalpuli identity shapes marriage alliances. It determines who assists during illness, who helps rebuild after flooding, who stands beside you during festivals. Festivals themselves are organized at this level. Preparation for ritual dances. Offerings collected collectively. Costumes prepared through shared labor. When imperial ceremonies require participants, the Kalpuli provides them. When warriors are needed, young men from the Kalpuli are trained and selected. Hierarchy operates quietly. At the top of Mexica society stand nobles, Pipiltin, families of prestige and inherited authority. Below them are commoners, Masahultin, the vast majority including you. Yet within the Kalpuli, distinctions blur slightly. Shared labor equalizes, if only briefly. You all kneel to plant seedlings. You all wake before dawn. You all listen to the same temple drums. Still, ambition exists. A young man who captures enemies in battle may rise in status. A merchant who prospers may accumulate influence. But mobility is gradual, structured, not dramatic. Justice, too, flows through the system. Minor disputes are resolved locally: property boundaries, debts, disagreements over water channels. More serious matters move upward to city courts. Punishments are firm but codified. The emphasis remains on order. Order sustains the cosmos. Order sustains the empire. The Kalpuli ensures that no one household drifts too far from expectation. It is both safety net and net of accountability. In the evenings, you gather with neighbors. Simple meals shared. Stories retold. Children corrected gently. You sense the continuity: ancestors who stood where you stand, descendants who will inherit the same plots of earth. Life feels enclosed but stable. Beyond the canals rise the pyramids of Tenochtitlan. Beyond those, the ambitions of emperors. Yet your world remains anchored in this small unit of belonging, a structure that makes vast imperial power manageable, understandable. Through Kalpuli organization, the Mexica transform a lake environment into a disciplined society. Through obligation and cooperation, they sustain both city and countryside. But not all lives are shaped by shared mud and maize. Beyond the canals and village clusters stand marble-like palaces of authority, residences of rulers whose garments shimmer with quetzal feathers. Let us move now from communal chinampas to the heart of imperial splendor. Now imagine leaving the narrow canals behind. The mud clings faintly to your sandals, the scent of water and maize still familiar in your memory. But ahead rises something altogether different. Stone, symmetry, scale. You approach the sacred precinct of Tenochtitlan, where temples rise like mountains shaped by intention rather than lava. At the center, beyond guarded entrances and carefully swept courtyards, stands the palace complex of the ruler, vast, ordered, deliberate. This is not reed and thatch. This is stone and cedar beams. Courtyards open into one another in geometric calm. Floors are swept smooth. Walls are adorned with painted scenes of conquest and cosmic imagery. Feathers shimmer in storage rooms. Turquoise glints in careful arrangements. The palace is not chaotic luxury. It is structured elegance. Servants move quietly across polished floors. Scribes sit cross-legged, recording tribute tallies on folded codices. Messengers arrive from distant provinces, kneeling before speaking. In contrast to the open Chinampa fields, the palace interior feels enclosed, curated. The air carries faint traces of copal incense, not from household shrines but from formal ritual chambers. You pass through a reception hall where nobles gather. Feathered cloaks drape over shoulders. Gold and jade ornaments catch the filtered light. Speech here is measured, deliberate, ceremonial. Moctezuma II, or whichever Tila occupies the throne at this moment in history, does not shout commands across the courtyard. Authority flows through ritualized behavior. When he eats, he does so behind screens. When he walks, attendants precede him. Power is performed softly. Meals in the palace differ greatly from village fare. Instead of simple maize gruel, platters arrive layered with complexity. Cacao prepared as a frothy drink, seasoned sauces made from chilies and herbs, tamales filled with meats or vegetables grown in tribute provinces. The ruler eats from fine ceramics. Servants wash hands with scented water. Even rest is refined. Private gardens flourish within palace walls, cultivated with flowers not for survival but for beauty. Exotic animals, brought from distant lands, are kept in enclosures. Birds with bright plumage, creatures rarely seen in rural communities. In these spaces, the empire's reach becomes visible. Every object is a testament to tribute and trade. Every garment reflects social distance from the labor that sustains it. Yet palace life is not without pressure. The ruler must balance alliances, receive emissaries, maintain ritual obligations precisely aligned with sacred calendars. A single misstep in ceremony could suggest cosmic imbalance. Just as villagers sustain the world through maize planting, the Tila sustains it through symbolic precision. Even leisure is structured. Poetry may be recited in the evenings. Music played on drums and flutes. Philosophical reflection encouraged among nobles. They speak of flowers and songs, metaphors for fleeting life. Impermanence remains a shared awareness. Despite grandeur, mortality lingers quietly in thought. From the palace terrace you look outward. Below, canals weave like veins. Markets bustle. Temples stand firm. And beyond them, Chinampa villages stretch across shallow waters, where ordinary families wake before dawn, grind maize, and fulfill tribute quotas. The palace depends on the village. The village sustains the palace. Contrast sharpens the understanding. In reed huts, smoke-stained ceilings. In palace chambers, incense perfumes air. In villages, hands blister from paddles and grinding stones. In palaces, hands turn codex pages and gesture in diplomacy. And yet both exist within the same cosmology. The same sun rises over Chinampas and palace gardens alike. As evening falls, torches flicker against palace walls. Reflections shimmer across canal waters. Somewhere in the distance, drums sound softly. Ceremony concludes. Servants withdraw. The ruler retires behind carved doors. And the city, vast and intricate, settles into night. From reed huts to sacred pyramids, from muddy fields to feathered cloaks, this world is layered, sustained by belief, labor, structure, and ceremony. We have walked its gardens and paddled its canals. Now let us rest in reflection. And now, as night settles gently over the lake, we allow the city to quiet. The canals grow still. The last canoe ties softly to its post. Temple drums fade into memory. What remains is reflection. You have walked the narrow earthen paths of a Chinampa village, feet damp with canal water, shoulders sore from carrying maize. You have felt the repetition of grinding stone against corn, the steady rhythm of obligation, the quiet endurance required simply to eat. You have stood in marketplaces where cacao beans measured value and voices blended into a calm hum of exchange. You have listened to stories of rulers and emperors, of Moctezuma II navigating uncertainty, of cosmic beliefs woven into the very structure of the day. You have stepped through palace courtyards, where feathered garments shimmered under filtered light and ritual shaped political authority. And throughout it all, one truth gently persists. Life was structured, layered, interconnected. The reed hut and the pyramid were not opposites. They were extensions of one another. The labor of ordinary families sustained imperial grandeur. The rituals performed at the Templo Mayor echoed through small village shrines. In this world, survival required cooperation. Belief provided meaning. Hierarchy created order. The sun rose because people believed it must. Maize grew because hands worked patiently. Markets functioned because trust existed within structure. It is easy, from the comfort of the present, to see only the drama of conquest or the spectacle of pyramids. But beneath the grand narratives lies something quieter. Repetition, routine, endurance, the steady grinding of maize at dawn, the measured exchange of goods, the calm recitation of sacred cycles. Even moments of upheaval, the arrival of foreign ships, the strain of tribute, the shifting of political alliances, unfolded within daily life that continued regardless. Children still needed feeding. Fields still required tending. Candles still burned low at night. And perhaps that is the most human thread of all. Across centuries and continents, people wake, work, gather, and rest. They organize their societies. They explain their universe. They seek meaning in cycles of sun and season. The Mexica world, with its floating gardens and towering temples, reminds us that even in vast empires, daily life remains intimate, grounded, physical. As you rest now, in a room far removed from lake waters and temple stones, consider the quiet resilience of those who shaped their world through steady effort. No engines, no electricity, only paddles, stone tools, memory, and belief. From reed huts to pyramids, from maize fields to palace courtyards, the cosmos shaped daily life, and daily life sustained the cosmos. And tonight, as you drift toward sleep, perhaps you can imagine the stillness of Lake Texcoco under starlight, the soft lapping of water against wooden posts, the distant glow of temple fires, the city breathing slowly, steadily, enduring. Rest now. The canals are quiet. The sun will rise again, gently, predictably, just as it has for centuries.